The intention of a photographer is to capture the beauty in places, obvious or hidden, in which modern age and technology cause us to dismiss. Hey, welcome to the Street Shots Photography Podcast. This is Antonio.
And this is Ward.
And this is episode 164 for the end of July 2022. And I'm always conscious of what I'm saying because I'm afraid I'm going to say 2020 for some strange
For me, it's
reason.
2019.
2019.
I keep thinking it's 2019.
Okay, you missed a year there, or a couple of years.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind going back into time. Actually, speaking of time, I just watched before we started recording, I had dinner and I watched Arrival. Have you seen that movie?
I have. Yes.
That is
Denis Villeneuve.
Yeah, that is a really good movie. And every time I watch it, how can I watch it multiple times? I love watching movies multiple times because it's like
Me too.
It's like looking at a piece of art multiple times. It's no different. But that whole sense of shifting through time in that movie, how the aliens speak to, what was her name, the actress and the actor?
Amy Adams.
Amy Adams. And how she keeps tripping through time and seeing her daughter, and that affects how she is communicating with the aliens and with her fellow humans. But the photography in that is so good.
Denis Villeneuve. Well, he's brought us the new Blade Runner and what's his last one? Dune.
Yeah. I don't know I can't remember who the cinematographer was on this, but there is something about it actually reminded me of Christopher Nolan. Christopher Nolan does this thing in his films where a character will look at something and then have a flashback, and then there'll be this sort of quiet flashback, something going on. How it happened in Batman, the Batman Begins, when Bruce Wayne comes back up to his burned out mansion, and then he picks up the stethoscope that his father gave him, and all of a sudden it's a flashback of his dad putting the stethoscope on his chest. And this is similar to that. There's a lot of this shallow depth of field and plays with light and stuff that there's like a scene where the character's child is in the foreground and there's some bizarre shape in the background. It's so out of focus, and it sort of mimics the aliens. And then as it comes into focus, you see it's a horse, So I just watched that movie I love the story. It's a great story. And I watch it, but for the photography, it's just so compelling visually. So,
it's funny that you're talking about going back and forth through time. I just went to visit my daughter last weekend. It was her university graduation, and we stopped by the bookstore, and I picked up a graphic novel of Slaughterhouse-Five.
Oh, really?
Vonnegut, yeah. And so I'll get my son into some Vonnegut through a graphic novel. So we'll see how that works out. But that's one of my favorite time travel stories, back and forth.
Come on, become unstuck in time.
Become unstuck in time. Billy Pilgrim. Yeah, absolutely.
Billy Pilgrim. Yeah. God, I haven't read that book in a zillion years. And I remember seeing the movie in school. We read the book and then we saw the movie. And I don't think I've seen the movie since. And we saw that and Catch-22. Those two were together as part of the. Maybe I saw that it was in college. I saw it. I can't remember, but it was a very strange movie for a young person to watch it. And I should pick that book up again. I haven't read it, but let's become unstuck in time. So speaking of unstuck in time,
unstuck in time.
I'm stuck in time. Not much, not a lot's going on. A couple things. Thought we would, talk about the photography stuff that's happened this week. I got pulled into being in part of a show
Pulled into, you were selected.
I was selected. Yes, I was selected.
You were
Actually,
selected.
yeah, not making light of it. It's just sort of a bad intro there. But
All right.
a photographer that I know who's very well known in the street photography world, Jamel Shabazz, who I've wanted to get on the show, and we will get on the show. He's actually said yes to be on the show. Yay! I'll talk about that in a second.
I'm looking forward to talking to him.
Yeah, and native Brooklynite has been shooting, photographing, people in New York, for forever. I met him a while back when I was working on the television show that I was shooting at Brick called. Now I'm spacing out. It's called BK Live, and he was. They did an interview with him. I can't remember if he was having a show or something like that. And I after the interview, I went up to him because I was just starting the podcast there. Me and Tom were doing it, and I was like, I'd love to have you on the show. And I gave him a card, and he was like, yeah. And we stayed in touch through Facebook since then. We haven't really crossed paths a lot. The beginning of this year, he was tasked or asked by Photoville to curate a show of Brooklyn photographers. Now, Photoville, I'm not going to get this exactly right, but Photoville started off as a photo festival that takes place in Brooklyn Bridge Park, and they set up galleries and all sorts of photo-oriented kind of classes and stuff in these shipping containers that are all set up in Brooklyn Bridge Park, and they've grown into sort of a worldwide organization. And
yeah, they're in Calgary in February.
They are.
Yeah, there's it's a construction fence that goes all the way around the whole city block of. It's like this canvas, this printed canvas that goes all the way
canvases,
around.
Yeah.
They
call it the fence, and
the fence,
they started setting up multiple fences or putting up images on multiple fences around Brooklyn. I don't know if in other boroughs and stuff like that. And so they've grown into this giant organization. Obviously, they're in Canada too. And when I first met Jamel on the TV show, we ended up bumping into each other in my neighborhood because his mom lives in my neighborhood, and I recognized him because he was wearing a bright green jacket. And he was wearing the same jacket that he was wearing during the interview, and I'm like looking across the street, and I'm like, that jacket, the color looks familiar, and I go, and so I went up to him, and we ended up standing on the street for like a half an hour, 40 minutes talking photography. Cool. And after that, he got interested in the work that I was doing, and then he asked me and Tom to be in a projected show in Poland, and so we sent him our work, and that was our first intro to Photoville. Wow. So earlier this year, he reached out to me. It was this year too, asking me about being in this show it's called the Brooklyn Connection, and I'll read in a minute what he wrote, but he said that when he was asked to curate the show of Brooklyn photographers, he says I was one of the first photographers he thought of to be in the show. Man. Yeah, which I was kind of amazed by. And I told him, honestly, I said, this is the best thing that's happening to me so far this year, because this year has been not a good year for me and life in general. And, hearing about being in a show was the best news that I heard. But I wasn't all that... I'm interested in it, but like, given the scope of events that were happening, like I really didn't care about being in a show. And I waited actually for the last minute to submit pictures, and I did. And they picked I don't know, eight or nine of them to put in the show. So let me read to you what this the Brooklyn Connection, what he wrote. It was like photos by let's see. Me, Amy Touchette, Christopher Cook, Melanie Hill, Philip Shung, and Shino Kitano. And these are Jamel's words here. It goes, when Photoville and Prospect Park Alliance asked me to serve as a guest curator on this exhibition of 6 rising photographers living in Brooklyn, I accepted the task. As a former emerging photographer myself, I understood the challenges that one encounters in the struggle to get their work exhibited. This new opportunity provided me with a great platform to help aspiring photographers showcase their work, curating an exhibition that could serve as a source of inspiration during these challenging times, and to do so within the beautiful space of Prospect Park. The 6 photographers selected have roots in Brooklyn. They share a common love for photography, and I've met them all within the last 10 years. And then I'm the first one on the list, and this is Antonio Rosario is a staunch advocate for analog photography. His images are focused in part on the diversity of the Kensington section of Brooklyn. So let's talk about this for a second. So,
okay, first of all, did he say you're an emerging photographer?
he said, "Well, I'm sort of grouped into this group of quote unquote emerging photographers." So, sure, okay, I'm not quite emerging, and the staunch advocate for analog photography. I love analog photography, but I'm not sure I'm a staunch advocate of it. But I think maybe he might have seen the switch to manual thing that me and Tom did once, or somehow that popped into
or friends with Shane, who does the old
maybe
work.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know.
Could be any of those, any or all of the above.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I was so last night. The show opened for a while, so the pictures are, and I'll put these in the show notes. They're like you said, they're printed on canvas or vinyl canvas, and they're attached to a fence, and they're like 4 feet by 4 feet or 3 feet by 4 feet. So they're significant size, and weatherproof and stuff like that. And this bunch of pictures are sort of grouped by photographer along this fence near an old house in Prospect Park that's being renovated. So last night, the photographer's talk was put off. The show opened up in June at some point, and the talk was postponed until last night. And and I was invited, of course, and I had mixed feelings about going, because I was a little unsure about how to speak in public. Whether I could speak in public or. I don't know. I'm not sure about a lot of things. It's like I'm starting to take new steps in this new life that I'm part of now. So everything is new, and I was like, yeah, I'm not sure I want to go. But then I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, I'm just sitting in my apartment or something. What else am I going to do?
Yeah.
So yeah, I decided to go, and the way it was set up was like there was about 40 or 50 people. Maybe 40 people. It wasn't a huge crowd. And then the photographers, and then a lot of the people who were the sponsors, and the people from Photoville, and they filmed us. And the idea was just have a talk with each photographer in front of their work, and everybody sort of walked around and spoke. And it was a nice cross selection of photographers and photography. One woman actually was telling us that she was shooting with a twin lens reflex, doing portraits on a Rolleiflex, and that camera helped her, get into, because people aren't aware of what a twin lens reflex camera is, and so that brought her in, made her sort of a curiosity. Her pictures are really good, and I won't get into all of them just because it's too much. You could, I don't know if all the pictures are available. Darn it, I didn't take pictures of everybody's. I only took pictures of mine, of my fence part. But I'm probably Photoville will probably put a video up of, because they interviewed us all, and they were filming us, and I didn't know what to say exactly, other than what sort of spit out was like, I said I'm just kind of the messenger here, I said the idea of photography in my case was that I'm sort of tasked to show people what I see on a day-to-day basis, and the pictures I post up were a lot of the pictures I took on my way to work. Actually, some of the pictures they put up were not in Brooklyn, which was really kind of funny because I sent them a selection of only pictures in Brooklyn.
Brooklyn, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and Jamel went, and I guess he went through my Instagram account, the hacked Instagram account, and found other pictures, and a couple of them were from Manhattan, so that was that was interesting. I'll not quite about Brooklyn, so this thing was a little mixed up a little bit, in terms of
Interesting.
Yeah, it was interesting, but the pictures were fun. One of my favorite shots that is in Brooklyn was a shot I took of a young boy standing on the F train, and the doors are open, and on the outside of the train is juxtaposed this lingerie ad, and there's a woman, you know, in a bra, like on the opposite side. So he's on one side of the door, on the inside of the train, looking at me, and then there's
Yeah.
this, bra woman
Underwear
on the
model.
outside.
Yeah.
And it is, I look at that picture and it's like, it's the kind of picture I've always wanted to take. I can't, like, I didn't know we walk around and wanted to take a subway shot, but it was like, I look at it, I'm like, I'm glad I took that picture. I really enjoyed that shot. And, maybe they'll give me this canvas when they're done from the show. I hope they get
That
it.
would
But
be cool.
yeah, and so it was a nice evening. It was hot, and boy, it was hot and muggy. And I did speak to a few people, afterwards. They asked me some questions, and it was really nice to connect to people. And again, and I realized, what? I'm glad I went. Better to have that experience and have a little pride that, like, I got some pictures hanging up someplace and people are
Somewhere
seeing
in
them.
public, yeah.
Yeah, and I could hear someone say, "Oh, that picture." They're talking about that picture in the subway, like, "Wow, that's a great picture." I heard someone whispering behind me.
Yeah.
And I can't help but think, like, that's nice. It's nice to hear
Yeah.
somebody enjoy
It's better
it.
than a heart on the screen.
Exactly.
On your phone.
Yeah, and even just to be able to explain myself a little bit, like to say, and I at the talk, I'm looking at the pictures, and I really had nothing prepared, but I'm saying to people, I think I said, this might be like the last street photography you see from me, because of this journey, the sort of transition from after Elizabeth died. I don't, not that she really had anything to do with my street photography, but I can sense that there's new things starting to brew in me.
Okay.
And this is the new chapter of my life, and I don't know if this new chapter includes me walking around with my X100 V F, sorry, and taking pictures, of people on the street, so yeah.
Cool.
There we go. So anyway, it was a nice experience. Nice experience. I enjoyed myself. Choked up a little bit when I was talking about Elizabeth, and got encouraged to continue doing. And Jamal was a real gentleman. He was really out there to make sure that everybody connected with each other, and he kept getting people together and wanting to get another group shot together, get a photographers together.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
Yeah. So yeah, that was
good.
Yeah, that was my my one photography experience.
Cool. I'm happy for you, man. That's very cool. Have Jamel on your, that's very cool.
Yeah. Oh, and so the plan will be, as I talked to him last night. I said, yes, I asked you about a zillion times to be on the show, and you said yes, and I just haven't gotten my act together to get around to it. And then he told me that he's got a book coming out in August, and see, that might be a good thing to talk about. And it's a book based on, he was photographing a lot during the crack epidemic in New York City. And so the book will be about that. I believe that's the one that's coming out. He's got, what's the company, Steidl is his publisher?
Steidl, yeah. That's
Steidl,
Gerhard
yeah.
Steidl. He's in Germany, yeah.
Yeah. So I asked him, I said, maybe you can get me a review copy, and then, when I get that, and we can talk to you about that on the show. So
yeah, those Gordon Parks volumes I have are Steidl books. They're amazing. And the Evelyn Hofer book I have, they're just amazing quality. Just nothing like
that's
them.
what I remember. Yeah, I remember you said that. And so when he said that, I was like, oh, they're really good publishers. He's like, yeah, they're really good. So I'll get the review copy. I don't know. We'll figure out how to get you some too. So, PDF or something.
Well, I'm probably going to buy the book when it comes out.
Okay, sure. Good. All right. And then we'll have some time, and I'll get him on the show. So maybe in the next, whenever his schedule is, but hopefully in the next couple of months. So we'll get that finally done. Yeah, I would love to talk to him. And he's much taller. I remember. I'm like looking at the guy. I'm like, dude, I didn't say this, but my brain, I'm like, dude, you're You got taller. It's either that or I shrunk. I just don't remember him. He's like this big, you know.
Well, like I said in the chat, we'll figure something out. We'll try to accommodate for his height on the
right on
podcast.
the show. Yeah. Can you? Yeah. All right. Okay. So that's it. Well, so anyway, I've been looking. You've been busy, or at least busy posting pictures. I don't know if it's been on Instagram, but I've seen the stuff
Yeah,
on
Instagram and
Facebook,
Facebook. Yeah.
and you're gone back to photograph your old home. So,
Yeah.
talk to me about that more, and talk to me in words, because all I've been doing is typing. I haven't really talked. Yeah.
So 2 weekends ago, I went back to my hometown in Saskatchewan. It's about a 5.5 hour drive east from here to attend my 40th anniversary of my high school graduation.
Mm-hmm.
So half the class was there. And what's funny about this class is that we're all very good friends. We've kept in touch over social media, or some of us still live there. A few of us live here in Calgary. So we're always kind of milling around each other. So I went back for that. And I had this urge the one morning before any of the festivities began of driving out to the old, I want to call it a homestead. It's not our homestead, but it was land and a farmyard that we rented for a few years when I was a teenager. So drove out there. It's about, I don't know, 10 or 12 miles out of the town. Mm-hmm. And it was funny because I couldn't find the entrance to the yard. The hedge, like they have these big Caragana hedges. It had all grown in over the entrance to from the road. So I had to go through and bushwhack, kind of walk backwards through this
with a machete.
But yeah, I should have had one. So I'm walking backwards through this thick, this thick brush. And then I turn around and then I see the old house, and it's quite moving, actually. Everything else still in the yard is still there. The house is there.
Was anybody living there?
Standing. No, it's completely abandoned. You see these urbex, whatever they're called, pictures of abandoned homes. Oh,
what's urbex? What does that mean?
It's urban exploration. And it is going through abandoned homes. So it's as if all the furniture, all the artifacts are left behind, and hardly anyone's been in these homes or whatever. It's not the case with this house. This house had been, I think, used as a party house or something after we had moved out. Anyway, the occasion was it was 40 years since I left that home. So my family lived there for another 2 years before they moved to another farm.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as I know, we were the last family to live there. And the thing about these farmyards, it's not like, if the family that originally set up that homestead leaves, another farmer buys it, and they may use the home, they may not. In this case, for us, the house was still in pretty good shape, and then our family moved in and rented and so on. So when we moved out, the farmers didn't really want to rent it again, and so that's how it fell into the state that it was.
They just leave it standing up?
Like they leave it standing up. They might use it for storage for something or whatever, but it's hard to secure. So you just kind of leave it as it is. And when it becomes so decrepit, you could knock it down, but it's still in the state that it's in. It was kind of interesting. Anyway, every window was broken out of it. So the weather's blowing through every single window, and the birds are coming in and going out and so on. And I wondered about how stable it was to go in. So I went in, I walked around it a little bit and peeked inside and wondered if, the floors and the floor joists were
You're not technically trespassing, are you? Or are you?
I sort of am, but I know the family. So
it's not, you'd be like, oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Right. There's not a problem. So I went in, the floor seemed stable enough, and I walked around and took pictures, tried to take a representative picture of every room, because every room had its own significance to the family, the kitchen to my mother, our bedrooms, and the living room, and a room that they, used to call the parlor, which was like whatever you want to call it, a secondary room that's, kind of where we had the stereo, where we set up the stereo. So I went in there, and it was, It's funny. It is nostalgic to go through there and kind of put yourself back in that time that we were in there, and I could imagine, I could hear the sounds that I used to hear and the records I used to play in the parlor
Mm.
and so on. It was fascinating, and then just the I think what struck me the most was how quickly the place decayed. Like 40 years just doesn't seem like that much amount of time. I mean, I think of the house we're living in now is already 25 years old. But another 15 years of that, and it's going to be in the same shape as that old farm. So
Was this for you? Like, did you plan to go there and photograph?
I had
Like,
thought about it. No, if I was going to go there, I was definitely going to photograph it.
okay.
But I was just
But I
like,
mean,
would I
like, you
get
didn't
it?
just go there with your phone and say, "Oh, this is like." Did you go
No,
with
no, I
a
brought my
camera?
gear with
Camera?
me.
Okay,
Yeah, I
you
brought
did.
my
Okay,
camera.
so there's a plan in this too.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the plan would have, if it was unsafe, I would get what I could out of it. But the stairs were solid. The
Mm-hmm.
house itself was still square and plumb, and it hadn't started sinking into the ground yet. So I felt
Wow.
relatively safe walking around. There was broken glass and stuff everywhere, and stuff left behind by birds, which you can imagine.
So
But
what was the goal photographically? What were you trying to capture?
just the memory echoes, ghosts,
Echoes. Yeah.
just to see what I mean. The pictures, the bedrooms particularly, they're not exactly ringers in terms of photography, right? They're just a plain representation of the wall and the walls and the windows, the window and the paint peeling and the cracks and the reticulation in the paint, all the layers of paint that have cracked. It's just kind of a memory, an echo of a memory, is what I was trying to get out of it. And I basically just cataloged every room and tried to make the light look as interesting as I felt it was when I was still standing in the building. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I found it. I'm really glad I went. I thought there would be a melancholy aspect, but there wasn't. It was just sort of like, okay, I can put myself back in this time, and in that way, it was fascinating.
Are there good memories there, or
Yeah.
I
Oh
mean,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I remember a couple of memories of when one of my parents' vehicles broke down, and I had to take the snowmobile, pulling a sled behind it to go to drive the 8 miles or whatever it was. It's like a Canadian, it's almost like dog sleds or something. Drive the snowmobile with my saxophone and the sled in the back, and drive the 8 miles into town so that I could get into band practice, and then which finishes at 10:30 at night or something on a Monday, and then I have to start up the snowmobile,
Oh,
freeze my butt off to go back out to the
yeah.
farm. There's stories like that, like stuff that I remember, very, very specific memories.
Did you have pictures of it growing up? I mean, did you take pictures?
Not many.
Okay.
There are a few that's when we were all kind of starting to leave the nest, right? I was the
Mm-hmm.
first. So there were three of us gone pretty much by the end, by the time the family had
Mm-hmm.
moved out of there, and then they moved to this other acreage. But there were, like, I wasn't around long enough and the thing was too, I was a little resentful because we had left town where I had my darkroom to this farmhouse where that just was not a possibility. So, and now I'm bringing photography back into that house, which is kind of the switch around.
Yeah. And so
But
you're approaching taking the pictures seriously, or was this? I mean, like,
yeah, no, I wanted to
like a
make
little
something
mini
of it.
project, a little.
Yeah, it was a little mini project of something, and there were a few phrases that were occurring to me. It's like the prairie wants it back. Like it's trying to swallow it up, sort of like
Mm-hmm.
the end of a movie like Poltergeist or something. It's a slow process, but eventually it's going to take it all back.
Yeah.
I walked around in what used to be our garden when we had 10 acres of corn, and it's all grown up and gone and tall grass now. Like it's all, these 40 years of it really wants to, it's like nature wants to take the yard back. So
Yeah. Yeah. Oh.
I thought it was fascinating. I mean, it was moving and a bit nostalgic, and interesting for me personally, and the fact that it had been 40 years, I think, had a certain resonance. No, I think it was a good visit, and it was a interesting project. It's not like any of my other work. Like
Right.
it's just a catalog of, and I've got one picture I think I'll post tomorrow or maybe even tonight of the dramatic sky. It'll be probably a black and white picture, dramatic sky over the house. One of the last pictures I took
an outside
before
shot.
I left the yard.
Yeah.
An outside shot. Yeah.
How long did you stay shooting?
I was there for about an hour.
Oh, really?
So,
that's it? Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's not that big, right? It's just,
right. Okay.
There's not much. I mean, I'm not much of a landscape building, photographer anyway. I just really wanted to capture the house and
I don't know why you're saying that, because you've posted a lot of shots of, like, you go to these abandoned churches, or there was some farmhouse picture that you posted a little not too long ago, which I really liked, because it was like you had the house and it was at dusk, and then there was another little like triangular structure on the
portico for the back door. Yeah, no,
yeah. So like I've seen those shots a lot, and so I don't know why you're saying you don't.
Well, no, I don't go out of my way. Like, it's not like, oh, I got to go back out and take these pictures. That was an organized trip of my beers and cameras buddies. They wanted to go out there, and I'm like, I'm all for it.
But you seem to have this as like a side thing that you do. I mean,
well, that's true. I'll
just like all of us, like, we have your thing that you do.
Yeah.
And then you're doing something else once in a while, but it's still part of your, it's like a parenthesis.
That's true.
That's a parentheses job. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
All right. Well, and any desire to do anything with these pictures, or that's it?
I may. I mean, I've got, there's some little snub, Dave's kind of rubbing off on me here a little bit. I might write some prose or some poetry about it. Something along the lines of "The Prairie Wants It Back."
Yeah. All right.
And then the metaphor of the window, letting light in, letting weather in, letting whatever, and what goes out. And
it's interesting. It just started doing a little parentheses project of restaurants that are closed.
Right.
Mainly shooting with the medium format camera. And as you were thinking about that, I wonder if our stuff would be too similar to create a zine, or would there be enough of your abandoned structures and me doing these.
Yeah, there might be. There would be pictures that don't sort of stand on their own to be on social media, might work in a zine.
Yeah,
we can certainly.
We have to bring that up again. We have to start exploring doing that, because we were talking about that. But I remember we talked about it while I was in a place where. Yes, I want to do a zine, but my brain wasn't doing it. Now that I'm a little freer in that, I think we should explore that again. Well, that sounds great. I'd like to see all the pictures together. I know you put out one at a time.
Sure.
And I don't look at Instagram anymore, so I have to find.
All right. I'll put them in an album for you. I'll put what I've produced, because I put almost all of them on Instagram, and I don't think I keep forgetting that you're not.
Well, you'll have to give me a few to put in the show notes, since we talked about it.
Okay.
And
I can put up. I mean, I'm on the PC here right now. I can.
Well, don't do it now. We're talking.
Yeah. Okay.
Don't.
My memory's so short.
No,
I can't multitask
when we're recording. No. It doesn't work. It says squirrel. What?
Squirrel. Exactly. Yeah. Something shiny over there.
Yeah. Okay.
But anyway, if you have an opportunity to do something like that, to kind of revisit your previous life, if that's something that interests you, I found it pretty interesting, rewarding, poignant, all of these things, and I think I'm glad I did it.
Oh, good. I'm glad you did it too. Yeah, because we benefit from seeing the pictures, the nice pictures. You shot with your regular cameras too? I mean,
yeah, most of it was my XE3 with the 16 millimeter, which is I love that lens. The 60 millimeter 1.4. It's the one I use the least. Well, my 7 Artisans fisheye is the one I use the least, but of my Fuji lenses, it's the lens I use the least, but it's the one I'm most glad I have when I do use it.
Don't tempt me. Buy another lens.
Everybody should have that lens. I'm just saying.
All right. I'll think about it. the other thing I wanted to talk about, and if we could see how far this goes, and this not related. Well, I guess it's related to us in many ways, but lately, Nikon just recently announced that they'll no longer be. I think they'll no longer be making new DSLRs. Doesn't mean they're going to stop making them what they've already got, but I don't think they're going to do essentially what Canon is doing, and what Sony's done a long time ago, is no longer develop new DSLRs. I think that's it, right? It's Canon and Nikon who are the only people left making DSLRs.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anybody left. I mean, I know there's a few Leicas and a few Hasselblads that are still DSLRs. They're not mirrorless yet entirely, but like I don't really count those companies as part of the main group of photographers. And so I kind of wanted to, we're talking about like what's the subject for tonight also to talk about. And I was like, well, I think this is actually a big deal. And I know I don't really want to talk about the technical too much, but because it is about equipment in some way, but kind of what the meaning of it is. And so, and by the time everybody hears this, it's not going to matter anymore. But the job that I'm working at, I don't know if I actually have said where I'm working, so I figure I'll say it now. I work at B&H.
Only
B&H
like one
camera.
of the biggest camera stores.
Biggest camera stores in
planet.
the planet. And I was working in their email and chat support. Actually, I worked in the store for a few months, and so, but without getting too much into me right now, but I decided to quit. And I got one more week to go before I resigned from there. The main reason is that I need to take time for myself to take care of me and integrate Elizabeth's death into my life now, and a job is not helping, and so so I decided to resign. But we could talk about that at some other point. The main thing is, though, I've been answering a lot of questions. Part of what people ask me, both in the store when I was working there, and in answering support questions too, is this idea about DSLRs and mirrorless cameras and what do they mean. And before Nikon announced this, Canon said that their last DSLR was going to be the 1DX Mark III, this giant tank of a camera. Right. Built for photojournalists
shooting the Olympics.
Yeah, with all this stuff, and it is a tank of a camera. The thing is huge. You could drop kick that down a flight of stairs and pick it up and start working again. Right. They replaced that with their new. They're replacing all their DSLRs with the R series, the OSRs, and they have the R3. The R3 is the flagship, and then the R5 and the R6, and now the R10 and R7. And if you don't know Canon, I learned that the higher the number is, the lower on the scale
right.
of the type of camera is. So like the R3 is like the prestigious one. The R10 is like, the consumer just get started camera. And so now Nikon's doing this, and I don't know how I feel about this. Like Nikon's last big DSLR is the D6, I believe.
6, yeah.
Yeah, which is also another tank of a camera.
It's like their last film camera was an F6, wasn't it?
Did they get to an F6? I know they had an F5, which was a great camera. The F4 was a crappy camera. I think there was an F6. Yeah, I don't know.
I think that was their last film one.
Yeah, but yeah, the D6 is their last big flagship camera. They only have a D7500, which is their quote unquote flagship APS-C sensor camera. Then there's like I'm sorry, I'm starting to get in my B&H head again. The D780, which is like this hybrid DSLR mirrorless camera. But that's it. That's it for Nikon. And it sounds like they'll still make them. I don't believe they're going to be making that many of them. Right. Based on my experience with there's supply chain issues and people trying to get these cameras. You can't find them anywhere. And right. I imagine that, just like Sony did, they're cannibalizing some of their smaller sensor cameras to spend more energy on their bigger sensor cameras. So a lot of the little APS-C Sony cameras you can't get anymore. In fact, they even announced that they're just putting those on hold or discontinuing them. The 6400,
6600.
6600, yeah, the 6400, 6600. You just can't find them, and they're like going to put their energies, because I'm guessing their profit margins are higher on like the
Right.
A7 IV. Sorry, I'm geeking out again. Anyway, Sony got out of the DSLR business however long ago, so they're all mirrorless. Nikon is now the third of the three big groups that are, and Panasonic and Olympus. They've been mirrorless for a while.
It's for a while.
Yeah. But now Nikon, and I'm a Nikon guy as well. I mean, I'm a Fuji guy, and Fuji's mirrorless, but I've got my Nikon stuff. I still have my Nikon lenses, and mainly I like my Nikon lenses. I mean, I never really upgraded from some of my Nikon equipment, like my D300 or D7000. I think that's what I got, and I never really got further than those.
Right.
But this now means that we're not going to be seeing a mirror flapping up and down anymore. And I don't know. What do you think? What's going on with you about this? Or what do you think it means overall, or does it mean nothing?
Well, because I would shoot sports every now and then, when Mark and I did that book, I had my Canon 7D, and I liked the 7D because it was APS-C, and so I got extra, whatever you want to call it, depth or magnification, or if you want to call it that, for the lenses that I was using to shoot sports.
Mm-hmm.
And that I was looking through the taking lens, and it was faster than, in 2016. I couldn't imagine using a mirrorless camera to shoot sports.
Oh gosh, no,
that quickly. No, there's no way.
No.
Right. So now we're at a point now. Well, just thinking of it strictly from sports. Now you can. Now with an R5 or the R3, which I would never afford, but it's possible. You can shoot. And I've got friends. I've got two friends in my Beers and Cameras groups at a group that has the R5. They love it.
Mm-hmm.
They love the glass too. They really like the lenses.
Well, now with mirrorless cameras, the lenses don't have, their focus point is a lot closer. So I'm guessing that the focus can be a lot more accurate because they don't have to travel. Doesn't travel through a whole bunch of things. Yeah.
So and they love it, and I mean, when I started hearing that, when in the Z series or Z series in the Nikons, they've matured now. Now we can treat them, and the battery life is almost as long now for many of the higher end mirrorless cameras as the DSLRs. So it's yes and no. Well, you could probably speak
in some
more to
cases.
that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the battery power is one of the things in general we're giving up. I mean, I would have my Nikon sit on the shelf, I don't know for how long, and I would use it, and I would barely touch the battery, and then I would use it again a week later, and just mirrorless, just naturally they're going to use more power. So, I mean, they are getting better with power. You are right, but I don't think they're going to match DSLRs, just because DSLRs don't use that much. They don't use that much power.
Right. There's a lot of it's clockwork in there. So
yeah.
But
does this bring up like the times? Like, I was looking through this book, the 100 Ideas That Changed Photography, and this is how I came up with the idea. Let's talk about this DSLR thing. The SLR was the thing that changed photography when it came out, right? So people are going from twin lens reflexes or Graflexes or whatever the heck they were using prior to SLRs.
Well, there's a way to get over the interchangeable lens problem with rangefinders, right? So on a Leica, you would pick a different frame line, and then you've got a parallax issue to deal with.
Mm-hmm.
So they came up with whomever it was, and I'm sorry, I don't remember the whole reflex thing of, well, what we can do, you can look through the taking lens. So you either have a semi-silver mirror, which is yucky, or you can have the mirror flip up and have it happen rapidly enough that it would work. And I mean, it's sort of like magnetic tape. I think you flog that technology as much as you can, and you have the mirror has to come up fast enough and not vibrate, the whole camera, and not do it so forcefully that the camera vibrates, and then have vertical travel focal plane shutters that whatever that were originally cloth, and then they became metal, and then they became titanium, and then that just you want the lightest running gear you can so you can move things as quickly as you can. We didn't really with mirrorless. We haven't completely licked this scanning problem because we still have rolling shutter. It's getting better.
It's getting better, yeah.
But there's still, most cameras you and I can afford have a bit of a rolling shutter issue.
Yeah.
But
just going from this to technology, I get people who ask me like, well, I want to get a new camera. What should I get? And I'm thinking like I have to advise somebody to buy something. When you buy a camera today, I think when you buy a camera all the time, like I don't really expect that you're going to get rid of the camera in like 2 or 3 years. You buy a camera today and it should last, unless for some strange reason you need to get the latest technology. And there's, obviously professionals and blah, blah, blah who have to stay on top of things.
They always did. Yeah.
They always did. Yeah. So they're the ones that are going to buy into this stuff first for the most part. But like the general public, someone says, I want to buy a new camera and I want it inexpensively. And I'm like, geez, do I, shift them to a DSLR because they're, like the Canon Rebel and the SL3 and the Nikon 5600 are all inexpensive cameras. They're hard to find, right? There's a lot. Some of them are hard to find. They're not in stock a lot. Mm-hmm. But like that is a dead end. Right. Even if Nikon and Canon are still going to be making the lenses because they've already tooled up for this stuff and they've got a big market for it. Like, would I want to encourage somebody to hit this dead end if you're going to have this camera for like 5 to 10 years, Yeah. And I'm sort of hesitant to do that because, you got this new technology, it's not really new, but it's
it's supplanting the old technology for sure now. So.
Right. And, just like any kind of shift in photography with the new technology, it offers a lot of benefits. I remember when I switched over to Fuji, and it was kind of a slow progressive thing. I mean, I had stuff that I was still shooting with my Nikon because I was also doing some video work with that, and that has moderately okay video, not great, but I was using it. But then I was moving over to actually it's funny, I still have it. It's all full of dust now. This little Fuji X20. Actually, should clean this off.
I got the black-bodied one. I have the chrome one. Yeah.
Yeah. This is now it's all dusty, but this is sort of my first inroads into what I might consider mirrorless. Even though I had the Canon G5, which is technically a mirrorless camera, this I think is like more of a mirrorless camera because it has an actually it doesn't have electronic viewfinder. It's got
an LCD overlay.
Yeah, it's got
so you get frame lines. It's got an optical viewfinder, but it's got LCD. It draws frame lines. Very cute.
Yeah, but I remember like thinking, do I want? I had a real hesitancy about using an electronic viewfinder, and I remember seeing, like just you said, those earlier electronic viewfinders don't show the world the way we want to see it. It shows it like maybe a bad television screen. Of course,
right.
They've gotten much, much better, right? And so now you're seeing, and then you got to start thinking of the advantages of it because, I'm thinking about in terms of selling somebody something, or not like I'm not trying to be a salesperson, but trying to get them to think about what are the pluses of something like this. And so now with, mirrorless cameras, one of the main things I like to say is now you don't have to guess about what your picture is going to look like. I was like, well, I didn't have to guess about it before. I'm like, well, yeah, you do, because you take a picture and then you got to look.
Yeah.
And if you don't know exposure and stuff like that, you're still just looking at the real world, and then you have to look at your picture to see if it turned out the way you expected it to see. So if you underexposed it by a stop because you wanted to saturate the colors, you need to look. Now, obviously, when you're looking through the electronic viewfinder on mirrorless cameras, you can see exactly how your picture is going to turn out. Mm-hmm. And I also use that as an advantage when I'm talking to students sometimes too, because when I was, and I've probably said this a zillion times, but when I first started photography, as you did too, I started with black and white photography, right? And I had a very hard time, even for a very long time after I learned and got into it, to see the world in black and white. Right. So if I'm shooting black and white film, but I'm looking through an optical viewfinder. I'm seeing the world in color, and then I'm getting black and white, and I can't make the connection. There are some people who can look at the world and see, oh, that's going to turn out this color in black and white. That's going to turn out that shade of gray, and that's going to turn. I couldn't do that. And so now with students, I tell them, well, look, you with a DSLR, you couldn't do that. I mean, again, you take a picture, then you have to look at it and then figure it out. But now you're seeing
with the film simulation, you can see it in the viewfinder. Yeah.
Right, and you're seeing the world in black and white, which I think is, an advantage because it creatively, right? Because then you're looking at the world. Like I love to look at things with really dark shadows, like thinking about like some of Mark Ryerson's work that he does with the contrast app. Contrast by Hornbeck. Hornbeck.
Yeah,
I got that right this time. I usually forget. But to like be able to see the world like that, and you don't get that opportunity with a DSLR. DSLR is using older technology mixed with newer technology, I guess. But it does mean a shift. It means that we've come to this point in photography that, I think future people who write about photography are going to say, here's the point. Just like we were talking about the shift from, older, maybe rangefinder cameras or old style field cameras to something that you can hold in your hand and take a lot of pictures with. The coming of the SLR. I think this is the same thing.
Well, I think there was a bit of inevitability when digital first came out, right? It was sort of because we had those point and shoot digital cameras.
Right.
The mirrorless cameras that we're using now are just super versions of those with interchangeable lenses. Right? They had the 2/3 inch sensor.
Yeah, bigger sensors now, smaller sensors then, better screens now, crappier screens back then. So it is the evolution. Yeah, and I don't know enough about the companies whether these are better profit making things because they're in business to make money. So these things have to somehow do better for them. But we're on the other end. We're the users, right? And we're the creators. Yeah. And what does that mean for us? And frankly, you know what? I thought I would really care and miss it. And like, you know what? I actually don't.
I don't either.
I don't have, which is, there's some part of that for me I'm sad about because I want to care about it. I want to have there's some part of me that wants to say, and I can't muster that up. I just can't.
If there was any mourning I would have done, it would have been when I sold my 7D. And lenses, I had this Sigma 24-105, which was only 2.5 or 3 years old when I sold it. And I'm like, no, I think I'm good.
Yeah.
Use the cast. That's how I ended up getting into, getting into the XE3 and the first set of lenses was by selling my Canon. So I actually went through that evolution. Bang,
Yeah.
And many of my friends did too.
I mean, and I have the actually funny, I forgot, I don't really get rid of my cameras.
Right.
I got a slew of them just because I never got around to it. Now it's obviously too late. I mean, I still have my D2X, which was my first professional, that was the flagship digital camera when it came out.
Right. It was 12 megapixels or something?
Yeah, it was 12 megapixels. The D2X and the D2H. And the X was the higher megapixels. The H was the faster shooting one.
Okay.
And it's stuffed in my closet someplace. I'm afraid to take it out because I'd be like, look at it. And the screen is like this big on the back. I'm sure,
Postage stamp. Yeah.
Postage stamp size. And like, oh, why do I care about these? But those ended up on the shelf and I didn't take them out or care about them or anything. I didn't care. And my D7000, which was a really good camera, and D300 too. I shot a lot of good stuff with the D300. I think that's a great camera too. It was
a popular camera.
Yeah. And I don't have any nostalgia over it. I'm very excited about the new cameras, and so I don't, but it does mean this. Shift. We're in the middle of this now. it was inevitable, just like you said,
Yeah.
the evolution of things. Many of the major companies are like, yeah, we don't care about that. And now we're used to seeing the
Yeah.
world through, a television screen, which is getting better and better. And you see the battery life is getting better and better. And the visual through the screen is getting better and better. So in other words, they even have on the new Nikon, and I think this is on the Canon too, the ability to make the screen your viewfinder that you're looking through, to make it look like the real world, to like subdue all the colors and create a more realistic looking view
Oh,
through
so
this.
that when you're shooting at night, you're not getting the boosted gained
Well,
up.
I don't know. Then you might get the boosted gain. It's not about that, but it's really about the colors. It's like turning off all the
Oh,
picture profile, but even making it like as neutral as possible so that it looks like the world that you would see through an optical viewfinder.
I see.
So yeah, so that because there are some photographers who say I don't want to see the stuff like I'm talking about before, like see it in black and white or see the color picture profiles. They just want to see the way the world looks. And I'm guessing that could be, not to generalize, but I think maybe a photojournalist or something like that would want to see the world the way it looks, right? And so
Right.
they want to shut everything off because they're not processing. Maybe they're not processing their pictures so much. So there's even that built into the higher end cameras. I mean, I don't know if that's going to trickle down to some of the smaller cameras, but some people would like that. I'm not, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, this is the end of an era. You can still use, a lot of the companies let you use the older lenses on the newer cameras with an adapter because you can do that. You can't put I get these questions. Can I put the mirrorless lens on my DSLR? I'm like, no. And they're like,
No.
why? I have to explain to them. I mean, but sure, I'm fine explaining because it's a new thing. People don't.
Flange to sensor distance.
Yes, but that's a geeky thing. For the regular person, they don't understand that.
Well, I feel bad for the people that did buy lower end DSLRs who maybe sort of understand that they can use their old lenses on the new gear, but having to buy an adapter in order to do so.
Well, that's
It's
where I
just
think this is where I think that Canon has done. I mean, this is to go into my thinking about Canon, but I think they've done some good future thinking with the newer, smaller sensor cameras that they're coming out with because they finally they decided to make, and this is like Sony as well, the same mount on their APS-C sensors as they do on their full frame sensors. So
right.
that there isn't this need to have an adapter at some point in the future. You can take a full frame lens and stick it on an APS-C size camera without having to do any kind of adaptation, using an adapter.
Right.
So some future proofing in that. And I think Nikon's doing the same thing. I actually can't remember. Yeah, they're doing the same thing but they don't have that many APS-C sensor cameras. But anyway, all that is going to benefit us because all this adapting and unless you're trying to be creative and stuff like that, but all this other adapting your old stuff to the new stuff, it's like it gets a little crazy to try to figure this stuff out. But yeah,
Right.
the one thing is the old lenses, they're not going anywhere. Like once you make an old lens, that is, the old lenses don't get obsolete for the most part. I got, a few Nikon lenses that still look really good on my Fuji, and I'm talking about really old Nikon lenses.
Yeah.
But there's enough resolution for them to run on even the Fuji medium format. As I bought an adapter, I
Yeah.
bought this Metabones adapter so that it could put a Fuji Nikon lens on the Fuji camera, and it extends out the image circle. Now, it's not the greatest optical quality, but it's got a character to it. But anyway, you can do that. Anyway,
Right.
I keep going down this technical, yellow brick road here. But I just wanted to think about the sort of if there was any philosophical things. But both of us seem like we don't really care. It's like
Well, no, we can care about it. It's just sort of like it is time. Like when I saw the R5 and the R3 come out on the Canon side, and people are shooting sports with it, and I had heard that they were shooting the Tokyo Olympics with the R3. I'm like, okay, well, they're doing it, so it's time. I want to get back into shooting sports in a big way. Well, there's the Fuji. I want to see what the Fuji XH2 or XH2S, whichever one. And that may be my next body because I have all these lenses. But I'm excited that there's an R3. I got to hold an R3 with the 85-1.4 or 85-1.2. What's the 85? I don't know what the R series 85 millimeter is, but wow, it's like holding 10 grand of equipment. Actually, I'm one to talk, but anyway, and it was just beautiful. Like I can imagine owning that. I can't afford to own one. But no, it's time. It's arrived. They're suitable they fit for purpose now. So.
And even Nikon on their Z9 or Z9, as you would say, they've gotten rid of the mechanical shutter altogether. There's the only mechanical thing in that camera is a little curtain that comes over to protect the sensor when you change lenses. But there's there's no mechanical shutter whatsoever, and they've put a stake in that because we all know the issues with shutters on digital cameras. You were talking about rolling shutter before, and it's an expensive thing for companies to try to figure out. There was all these little tricks that they can do. There's some software things some companies do, but there's the stacked sensor, which again I won't go into, but that helps to mitigate that rolling shutter kind of thing. But Nikon, because they've gone with the electronic shutter altogether, has they have to deal with this issue of rolling shutter. And when you're shooting sports, you're going to get rolling shutter, or I call it jelly cam. You get jelly cam with an electronic shutter, and Nikon's like, okay, we're done with it. It reminded me of like when Apple decided to yank the floppy disk from the iMac. Like, there's no floppy. We're done with floppy disks. And everybody's like, you're out of your mind. You can't do that. And Apple's like, no, we're going to do it because this is old and technology. And so Nikon is, Nikon's a lot of things, and they're very slow at coming out with cameras, and they're very slow to ship them and stuff like that. But when they do come out with something, at least with this Z9, they're setting the bar really high and putting more nails into the DSLR, SLR camp. Like, that's it. We're done. We're now stepping into the next century of photography. This is what we have to do now. And all of it just benefits us in the sense of allowing us to be more creative. I think they're in the cahoots with the hard drive companies, though. They're shooting 40 frames a second raw. You're going to have to store all this stuff on a terabyte hard drive. But that we'll get into the conspiracy. Another show.
There is that.
Yeah, but they've crossed that line, and I'm kind of if they spend more time and energy, if they actually spend more time and energy shipping the things that they talk about rather than. Because the Nikon cameras are so back ordered, I think frankly people are not going to see them for a very, very long time. But they came out with such a really nice camera.
Yeah, well, but it's popular. It's just bad timing on the planet.
Maybe they
right now.
Take their energies out of the DSLR, stop making these 7500s and 5600s, and the Frankenstein D780, which is, sorry to say that, it's a Frankenstein camera. Doesn't know
I like
what
the D850.
The D850 is the top of the line. I mean, that's it. I mean, no, it's top of the line. So against the D6, but it's, I would say, the top of the line other than the D6.
Yeah.
But take their energies and start putting it into manufacturing the other stuff. The Z series is really good cameras, and I think all it does is help us make better pictures and quieter. More accurate than people like, I tell people who are buying a camera for the first time, like if you want to get something like a Z5 or a Canon, R6, something like that. It's a camera that you can grow into. Like, all the stuff is there. With the DSLR, you sort of hit a barrier.
Right.
But with these mirrorless cameras, you can put it on automatic, right? And you can do this with DSLRs too, but there's something about, like, you sort of future-proof yourself getting these like good mirrorless cameras, so that you put it on automatic. You take great pictures of your kids running around the yards. As you learn more about photography, you start to dive into the more features that are in there, and that's the whole thing about, again, mirrorless cameras, is that you get better software built into them, you know, and because cameras now are computers. essentially.
Mm-hmm.
And all this is gonna be better. And the DSLR just hit, they just hit that ceiling with it.
Yeah.
So
You can also do wacky things like those F11 long telephotos, the 400 and the 600. They're what, F8 or F11. You on a DSLR you couldn't view through that thing, right?
Oh, just because
just because the aperture is so
right.
small, right?
Right.
And it would be impossible on a film camera, pretty much.
Oh, that's true. I didn't even think about that. Yeah. So
and they're light and they're short and they're amazing. It's amazing gear, and that's made possible by this shift in technology on the camera side.
So no love lost. I mean, it served its time, and I'm happy. But it just like any of the camera progressions, it makes me wonder what the next, like, when we're sitting here, if we're sitting, like, what that next shift will be, and maybe there isn't another shift coming up, but maybe there is, and what would the cameras of the future look like? I always picture something out of like in 2001, and there's a scene in 2001 where they're having a meeting, and this guy's walking around taking pictures of everybody in this conference room, and he's got this thing up to his face, and it's like,
it's a Pentax Spot Meter 5 is what it looks like.
But I'm thinking, like, well, that's not too far from what we're doing now anyway. But he's walking around, and there's no shutter sound, and he's just is quietly doing that. Yeah. And is it still, we're going to be looking through viewfinders? We'll be looking through electronic viewfinders. I mean, I don't know what it will be. It'll be electronic shutters. I mean, everything will be electronics. And to go, last thing I want to say about this for me is, and who was just talking about this? I can't remember. Oh, I was listening to Barry and X speaking with Hugh Brownstone, and it was one of the, I was going back through back episodes that I've listened to, and this was one that they recorded at the beginning of the pandemic, and they were talking about the love or something about like the piece of film, and knowing that piece of film actually captured the light,
right?
That bounced off of the subject and was, you're recording an analog of that light, and
right. And the piece of film was there with you at the time.
Right. The film was with you. The light was there bouncing off the film. Like there was something tangible about it. And then the one thing that I'm not, this is the one thing I'm sad about, is that there's nothing about that in digital. There's no carryover. The light doesn't stay with you. It's just,
turned into bits,
signals and electricity turned to the things. And there's nothing that's, there's no residue. That's what I was going to say. That's the word.
Okay.
There's no residue of photography with digital cameras. And that's me just being nostalgic about it. But there's something, those guys were talking about it, and because we're of the same generation. Mm-hmm. And anybody like Shane Balkowitz, who's doing the wet plate, anybody who's doing wet plate collodion or any kind of old analog style photography or, film, even Polaroids. Sorry, I was thinking about this because I have this Polaroid of me and Elizabeth that we did, and I've been using this as like, this has been on my desk and stuff like that. And I realized this piece of film was with us.
That was there.
This piece of paper, the light bounced off of this.
The noxious chemicals.
The noxious chemicals, yeah. Well, luckily I don't get to see it. But this is an artifact, and that's why I remember when I was walking around during the pandemic with the Polaroid camera, because I wanted artifacts of the time.
Yeah.
So mirrorless cameras, we're never going to see that again, and we've made a further step away from that. Not that there's always going to be film cameras, and there's that, but and if someone like me or you wants to go back and do analog stuff, we can, and I can still have something that is of the time. But there's a little bit, we've moved further away from that, one more step, even with the electronic viewfinder. Because electronic viewfinder, you're not seeing the world; you're seeing a television view of the world. Yeah. So anyway, that's just my little bit of, melancholy about this thing. But that's about it. I think I can get over that. Somewhat.
I think I'm already over it.
Okay. All right. And speaking of over it, I'm over it. I'm done. We're done. We've talked for a while. I can't believe we spoke for a long time.
Well, you did most of the talking on this one, I gotta say.
I did? Oh, man. Damn it.
Man.
I gotta get you to talk more.
Okay, I'll try and think of something for next time.
Okay. Because I can't listen to the show because I can't listen to my own voice organ. All you people who are listening to me, you're brave to listen to me talk for so long. Anyway, I think that's a wrap. So let's wrap it up now. Let's tell people where they can find you if they don't know where already.
Okay, on Instagram, I'm at Ward Rosin Fine Art. I gave the wrong address last time, so I'm Ward Rosin Fine Art on Instagram, Ward Rosin Photography on Facebook, and I'm W Rosin Photo on Twitter. And that's where you'll find my farmhouse pictures on Instagram and Facebook.
Okay.
That's it. That's how you'll find me. And I have this little business. It's our unofficial sponsor. Ornis Photo, ORINS.photo. Come on over, see what I got for. I offer Fuji X mount and Sony E mount APS-C lenses for Seven Artisans from Seven Artisans. And I also sell lens adapters for the same mounts.
Yeah. I think you're going to have a lot of fun with lenses and adapters. You go to your site because I love third-party lenses, inexpensive ones, and having fun with adapting other lenses. It's to me, it's always been a way to bring excitement into things and sort of an unpredictability as well. So
I also like some of the precision too, like that 55 millimeter micro Nikon lens that I have. It's a macro lens, and wow, does it ever work good with my Fuji?
Oh yeah,
it's a great lens, flowers and stuff.
I regret selling that lens, but okay. But anyway, that's a long time ago. Well, great, fantastic, man. And I can be found where? I'm on mostly Twitter now, so AM Rosario on Twitter, Rosario Photo on Facebook. You can see my work on Instagram. Don't follow me. You'll see all my street work, and I haven't decided whether I'm going to start a new account yet. So far, I haven't. As things settle down, I'm going to start working more on our website a little bit more and get it more fine-tuned. I might change the hosting on it and maybe bring it over to Squarespace or something like that to make it a little easier to work with. So I really want this is sort of a goal for the future is to get our Street Shots website a little bit better rather than just hosting the audio files, or at least one of the places to host it. So anyway, that's for the future, and we'll have we have a guest for next time. Hopefully that will work out for our next middle of August show. So cool. I'm not going to say who yet because it works out. All right. Well, yeah, that's it. I'm done. You done?
Me too. We're all good.
We're all good. All right. So thanks for joining us, and see you in a couple of weeks. And have a good night, Ward. Thanks for hanging with me tonight.
Good night, man. My pleasure. Right. We'll see you.
Good night.
Good night.